Well, thank you everybody for joining. I wanted to do a quick overview of our new personalization product called Personalize. It's very creative. There's also a couple products around it that really make the personalization much more effective, and we think will bring personalization to a lot of customers that have not successfully done personalization in the past. So at ContentCon this summer, we did announce what we're calling the future of personalization, which is a combination of tools that will allow customers to adopt personalization in specifically a composable architecture. So personalization is something that you might have been able to do in a monolithic environment because you're sitting on top of the CDP and all these things are glued together in such a way that if you follow the path, it might work. Personalization in a composable environment has been more difficult in some ways. And so we really focused our implementation on making sure that composable personalization can be actually used and done at scale. So why did we prioritize this? Personalization is one of those things where the gap between how much people want to do it and how much they're able to actually do it is really high. I've always joked that personalization is one of those things that has been a year away at every company for the last 10 years. And so we really asked ourselves, why are people not doing it? And why are they not able specifically to do it at scale? And by scale, let's take a look at what we're talking about. This is just a hypothetical example of a company that might be in 4 geos, targeting different industries, different personas within those industries, and different customer segments. And when you multiply that out, you can get almost 300 potential different variants of just a single piece of content. Now, is it realistic that every company is going to have 300 different versions of every piece of content? Well, maybe, maybe not, but we at least want to give you the tools to be able to attain scale like this. So if we look at the reasons that we, in talking to customers, talking to partners, why has this not worked before? We really found that it oriented around 3 main challenges that had to be solved. So the first one, in a composable personalization environment, you end up bolting on different systems that will fragment your content. So you have personalized content over here in this system. You've got other content in the CMS. It's very difficult to keep track of all that and also apply the governance and the workflows that you want for your content. We also found that sometimes this has a heavy reliance on IT. So if you need to go back to an IT team every time you want to run a new test or personalize a new page, that's just going to prevent you from scaling because marketing teams don't typically have an army of developers chasing them around, asking what's the next thing that they can be working on. So we had to do this in a way that marketers were very autonomous from their technical teams. Secondly, customers already are struggling to keep up with creating the amount of content they want before they add personalization to it. And so if you do start to do personalization, even if you have 6 or 7 audiences, right? In theory, you're going to want to tailor a lot of that content to those audiences. And suddenly you have 6 or 7 times more content to create. And nobody right now is getting the budget to increase the size of their content team 6 or 7 times. So riding in on a white horse is generative AI. Well, great. It's transformational. It's really interesting. But using stock AI is not going to be a way to differentiate you and preserve your brand. So there needs to be some other answer to that. Otherwise, we're all going to end up sounding exactly the same. And then lastly, how repeatable and how much can you operationalize the process of personalization? If it becomes an afterthought, if it's something that I will do once we get the site or the content out, you're always going to have the next high priority thing that's going to take your attention, and you'll often not do nearly as much personalization as you want. So the ideal is that this is built into your normal content workflow process and done so in a way that is automated as much as possible. So our thesis is if we can solve these 3 things, then we can get customers doing personalization at scale. So Personalize announced this summer, and becoming available to customers at the end of September. Now, Personalize has a couple components. It is the Personalize engine itself, but it also involves a pretty serious upgrade to our CMS to make authoring that content much easier and keeping track of all that content much easier. I'll talk about that in a second. So if we jump forward and we look at some of the reasons why this is going to feel like a different experience to your customers than what you're doing with, say, third-party personalization, we've brought the authoring experience directly into the same experience that CMS users author content in today. Exact same content models, exact same interface. And it's a little maybe hard to see here on the screenshot, but this is a screenshot of our entry editor in Contentstack, which is where you go to create content. Now, when you're looking at this base entry, you might want to override some of it for a specific audience. So what you can do is go into a dropdown and say, now I want to see a version of this page for my rewards members. And by default, you're seeing the exact same content. What you can do is go to any individual field or image and rewrite it or change out the image just for that one piece of content. So all the other content on the page, it's not copied and duplicated or sent anywhere else. We're just very discreetly overwriting the exact part of the page that we need to address for personalization. So one thing we've done is make that experience really easy. That means if you're bringing personalization to a customer or a client that's already using Contentstack, there's no additional changes to content models. Whatever they're doing now, this can be layered on top. This is also all delivered with edge-based delivery. So for a long time, personalization would be one of those things where you load the page and then you see it kind of like pop in something else after the page load. This is all edge-based, so there's complete flicker-free, very fast delivery of this content, even if you are addressing many different audiences and very substantial content changes. In terms of targeting audiences, so one thing that we have done is we are CDP agnostic. So in the case of larger monolithic systems, you're kind of using their customer data strategy. In our case, we're working with customers that already have a CDP or maybe even have a custom CDP. So what we didn't want to do is have to have you make big changes to how you're tracking and segmenting your users to use Personalize. So what we will do is integrate with their CDP to bring the existing segments into Contentstack. Also, the signals that will actually identify when a visitor visits, the attributes about them that we might want to know to determine what content they're getting, those are all determined on the front end with whatever systems you use now. So your customer data platform will say, this person is a rewards member, this person is signed up for my fall event, and pass all those attributes to our personalization engine. From there, it will take all those attributes and decide what content that this customer should be seeing. And it's another small screenshot here, but you can see different audiences that have been built by a combination of attributes. And then those audiences can be targeted with variants. And you can have as many of these as you want. This is also how you can set up A/B tests, where you can say, for my rewards members, I'd like to target them with two different offers. One is free shipping and one is 25% off. You can run that test. And then we also have analytics built in to understand which of those is winning. So these audiences and tests can be layered on top of each other and combined in a way that we think is really powerful for getting the right optimization or the right personalization to the right customer at the right time. So with that A/B testing, it's worth noting that all of this personalization can be initially set up by a developer. So we have an SDK that you add to your front end, but then subsequent to that, marketers can go and create new variants and create new tests themselves. So in this case, all you have to say is what does success look like on a page? It might be that they click a link. It might be that they fill out a form. And then you can run as many tests as you want with as many different elements of that test. So it's multivariate testing. You can decide the traffic distribution that you want to send to them and then enable that test. This is really, the way that we keep this from getting totally out of hand is with the ability to preview and impersonate audiences and tests visually. So we recently did a huge upgrade to our preview experience, which is a full page experience. You can see exactly what your website looks like. What we added to this also was a timeline view. So many of our customers will schedule releases or publishes tied with campaigns. So in this view, you can go to any date in the future and say, what will my website look like at that point? It will compute all the changes against all the campaigns, all the scheduled publishes that you have between now and that date. And it will show you what that website will look like. You can do a diff with what it looks like now. It's a really powerful feature for teams that are really leveraging scheduled campaigns and publishing. In addition to that, you can now do your audience impersonation there. So in this screenshot on the right, you can see all of the different audiences and how they might fall into an experience that you've created to them. So you can individually turn on, in this screenshot, it says my eco-conscious travelers and people who like bird watching. Those are going to highlight all of the different potential variants that you're going to get on the right, and then actually show you what that experience will look like for that particular user at any point in time. So as you think about all the different audiences that you're supporting, scheduled campaigns, you can really kind of lose control of exactly the experience that's going to be delivered. And our new preview experience is really excellent for that. And it's a very visual tool, which is important to the marketers that are actually running these tests and optimizations. So here's some stats just on why this is important. In one case, companies can generate 40% more revenue. That's a quote from McKinsey. Personalized CTAs perform over 200% better than basic CTAs. And 90% of marketers report seeing improvements due to personalization. So this is where we know it's important, but how are we going to get them there? And we really think that Contentstack Personalize is the way to do that because of how much we've emphasized no code, move quickly, don't learn a new tool to do it, don't fragment your content across a lot of different systems. So use cases, many people on the call will be aware of these, but things like membership status, things like promoting products to people that you think would be interesting to, geolocation as a use case. So some of these things will provide the attributes that you need. So we can tell where the user's coming from. We can tell what device they're on. But some of these attributes are going to come from what you can tell about your visitors. We also have A/B testing, device recognition, and content variation. So a lot of different uses for the tool. Where it gets interesting, if we talk about that second bucket, so we talked about how easy is it to get personalization up and running, which was our most important aspect as we've built this product. And we've actually, this is the third version. We'd actually built it a few times before and decided it's not easy enough. Marketers won't be able to do this themselves. And we've scrapped it and started over. So what you're seeing in our product is really an evolution of many attempts to get this right. If we move on to how are you actually going to be able to keep up with all the additional content that you have to create, we do have an AI assistant that we've had in the product for 1.5 years now. It brings LLM tools into your environment, whether that's Bedrock, Gemini, ChatGPT. We're totally agnostic about that. But what you can see here is that only really is helpful if we have the additional context to make that text that you're creating specific to your business and to your audience. So we've highlighted here, this is our writing assistant on the side. We've turned on our knowledge vault. that comes from our BrandKit product, which is what allows you to do on-brand generative AI. So by loading a bunch of text documents into your Knowledge Vault, we're able to pass that context to the LLM. So now it can write about your products and your services. We've layered on a brand voice to this, so you can build voice profiles. So you might have one for social, you might have one for your .com. And then highlighted in pink there, you can also add the audience attributes for the content you're creating. So when I flip to rewards members, turn on my vault, turn on my voice, and say I'm specifically writing for them, when I ask AI to rewrite this in such a way that will reach these users, suddenly, not only does it sound like you, not only does it know what you are trying to accomplish, but it will also target specifically the users that you are trying to reach. And so LLM out of the box is impressive, but when you layer on these additional contexts, now it can actually help you keep up with those 6 or 7 different variants of content. And then lastly, if we look at that third problem, how do we operationalize and automate this as much as possible? So I just showed you there in the BrandKit how we now have all that extra context that we can pass to the LLM. All of that can now be automated with our Automate product. So Automate is our automation product that allows you with low or no code to set up really complex workflows that can be executed based on some trigger in the CMS. So in this case, if I create a new page, that can be a trigger. And then I can have a certain number of actions happen on my behalf in the background. So what we demoed at ContentCon was creating a new piece of content, and with one button click, rewriting that content for the intended audience. And what's happening there is it's taking the base piece of content, it's looping through every single one of the audiences, it's asking AI in combination with our BrandKit to rewrite it, and then it can just drop it into a review state. So those marketers that want to do personalization are not sitting in front of a keyboard for an hour and a half trying to rewrite all the content. All they're doing is reviewing and tweaking it. So this, the combination of AI and automation on top of Personalize, is how you can start to approach that scale. That's those 288 versions that we were highlighting. So in terms of what's next, we are, as I said, making this available to both partners and customers starting in October. So if you do have a sandbox, if you want to start playing around with it, that would be the first time that you could go hands-on. We do have content about this in our academy, contentstack.com/academy. We do have product demos available in there. At the end of the month, we will also have a complete video course on personalization that you can walk through. What we can definitely use from partners in this case is there is an aspect of strategy to personalization. We're providing the tools, what we really think are the best tools to do personalization in a composable environment, but we're not the experts in our customer specific business or what would be the first ways to bring personalization or testing into their organization. So we can definitely help you become familiar with Personalize, but this is where we expect our partners can really help our customers get the real outcome that they're looking for by bringing your expertise into this as well. And that is all that I have. Kelly, I don't know if there's any questions.
Yeah, no, Connor, that was great. Thank you so much for walking us through that presentation. There are a few questions here. I will just get right into it. So our first one for you, Connor. So does Contentstack still work with third-party personalization?
Yeah, that is a good question. So we had talked about our variants capability, which is a CMS feature that allows you to make different versions of content. That is available to our third-party personalization partners as well. So if they do build an application, and we have connectors to a lot of third-party providers today, the benefit is that authoring experience will be the good experience that keeps them in the CMS. The engine itself can sit outside of Contentstack. So that engine will set up all the rules once you've identified the user, but then it can just specify, I want this variant of the content. That third party is not having to hold all the different versions of text. So when you need to update stuff, you're bouncing around. So it was intentionally built so that you could continue to use a third-party personalization engine if you choose to, but the experience itself will be much better for authoring the content.
Great. And I see one just came in. Hi, your edge delivery is based on which hyperscaler / CDN network?
Yeah, so you can use any kind of edge functions. Our hosting solution Launch has those built in. But if you have access to put our Personalize SDK into any kind of edge function provider, they will all work.
Perfect. And our last one here, what are the 3 biggest ways we're different?
Yeah, so we set out to make this personalization that you can actually use. So reducing the dependence on tech is really important. Helping you with the scale and the automation, really important. The fact that you can use any CDP, really important. We're going to have native connectors to the most popular ones, but even if they're using something completely crazy, via API, they can import their segments as well. So what we tried to do is make sure the lift to adding personalization to Contentstack is as low as possible. We also tried to make that authoring experience really good. So I can come in and very quickly see on this page, I'm updating this image, I'm overwriting the headline. With one click, you can revert that back to the base entry. So getting it up and running, actually using it is number 1. 2, the experience of writing the content. This was designed as a marketing tool, not something that involves a lot of developers. And number 3, I think the combination of AI and automation on top of that really makes this something distinct from solutions that you might have elsewhere. Because we sit on your lake of content in the CMS, we can make API perform really well in terms of helping you write, and with even automating much of this process. So that's where I would say are the 3 main areas that we're going to be different than something you've seen before, and just as importantly, why your clients and our customers are actually going to be able to do it this time around.
Great. And we had one more come in, which is kind of perfectly timed. Connor, what kind of CDP integrations are we planning?
Yep. So at launch, meaning in October, segment Telium will be our first. We're also looking, I'd have to look at the discrete roadmap. We'll probably be able to add 1 or 2 of those a month based on what customers are interested in. Once we've done the first one, it's a kind of a boilerplate. So I expect that we'll have at least the 4 or 5 most common CDPs by the end of the year. But again, if we don't have an integration, you can still use it. There might just be a little bit more set up for that.
Great.
I see a question about cost here as well. So we benchmarked it to be pretty similar to what you get with other tools. I would say the all-in cost is probably a little lower than if you're using Contentstack and go with a third-party provider. There's going to be more licensing fees and stuff like that up front. You're working with the same customer, so we don't have to tag on as much of that stuff. It is based on personalized page views. So if you have a very large website, you've got 100 different pages. If you're only doing personalization on your homepage and your Contact Us page, if you add up the number of page views on those 2 pages, that will give you a sense of your volume. So you can start relatively small and kind of grow into it, but it's ultimately going to be based on the number of page views, 2 pages that you're doing personalization on. Doesn't matter if you're personalizing the whole page or just a call to action, it will just count as a personalized page view. So we tried to simplify it as much as possible. There's really only one metric, and you can get to that just by understanding the traffic to the website that you're personalizing.
Great. I think that wraps up our Q&A portion. Connor, thank you so much again for taking the time to run our partners through all things Personalize. And for those partners that joined us today, thank you again. The recording will be available in the next couple of days. So watch your inboxes for the link. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again in October.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.